Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Training Café. I'm Eric Hörst. It's noon Monday, at least here on the East Coast of the United States. It's noontime. No matter where you're at, though, it's probably a good time to sip some coffee with Coach Hörst. So let's begin this Training Café as we do each time around with a communal sip of coffee, because I'm a big believer that climbing is a transformative thing. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. And it transcends boundaries of country and religion and politics and all those things that divide people. Climbing brings us together. So in the spirit of climbing, lift your coffee cup or beverage of choice and let's sip together. And that's some good Sen blend, the special Christmas or holiday blend that we roast each year for PhysiVantage. Let's move ahead. It's the Monday before Christmas or before the holiday break. I guess no matter where you're at, I hope you can be watching me and enjoying me. I see a message here that the volume is low. I'm not sure what I can do about that. Let me move my mic up a little closer here and see if that makes any difference or not. I do have a new computer set up, so maybe that is something I'll need to troubleshoot after this episode. But give me a comment here if it's the volume is loud enough for me to continue. Because if you're just seeing me move my lips, then that's not in a very effective way to run the show here. Where was I? Oh, I guess I was at the shout out. Each Training Cafe, I do a shout out for something noteworthy, at least in my mind, and something that is very noteworthy in the last couple of weeks since we last met. Jakob Schubert in Spain, I believe in Margalef, or was it Sierrana, did not one, but two 5:15s in a day. Now, he had worked the routes, both of them previous days, but to actually be able to send them both, really crimpy, steep, bouldery routes, hard on the skin, I'm sure, even harder on the muscles, and to do two of those in a day is an incredible feat. More evidence that Jakob is one of the world's very best climbers. Of course, he won an Olympic medal, but outdoors, he's also one of the very best. And so congrats to Jakob on that. And before we get on to today's main topic, which is talking about training and dietary considerations, and I'll give you a few tips for the holidays, I wanted to mention for our European viewers, a lot of you for the last 2 or 3 years have been emailing me or messaging me or asking me, when will PhysiVantage products be available from or in Europe rather than having to pay the expensive shipping from the United States? And the answer is maybe the end of this week or perhaps next week. It's been a long time in the works, but we have finally gotten the hurdles overcome, and I've troubleshooted all the problems, and I've partnered with Epic TV and their online store, as well as the Banana Fingers online store out of the United Kingdom, and they will be distributing PhysiVantage products beginning almost immediately. We have a few shipments, a few pallets of product on the way to them right now, and they should arrive in their warehouse in the coming days. Hopefully by next week, it'll be up on their website, and you European climbers can begin to benefit from the PhysiVantage Nutrition products that I have developed over the last 3 to 5 years. This business has been growing and really taking hold and dominating here in North America, and I'm so excited to bring the products to stoked European climbers as well. So check out the bananafingers.com store or the Epic TV online store, and you can begin to place orders in the next few days for supercharged collagen, Endurex, and Crush supplement. Those are the first three products that we will be presenting in the European market, and then we will add to that as soon as we can. Okay, so let's move on to the topic, and then I will get to your training questions. I see one or two have been typed in already, and if you have a training question, a climbing question, an injury question, nutrition question, anything climbing performance related, I'm happy to try to give you the best answer I can, and if I can't answer it, I'll try to tell you where you might find a good answer. And so we'll get to that in just a few minutes. But, heading into the holiday season, it's kind of a time where I'm a big believer you need to kind of kick back and relax a little bit and enjoy time with family and friends. Perhaps you're having some get-togethers, a Christmas dinner or maybe a New Year's Eve party. And those things are great, to kind of blow off some steam and let loose and celebrate the year behind, and also anticipate and plan and plot and think big for the year ahead. And so it's an important time of the year, I think, for us. Now, some climbers will, have maybe outdoor climbing plans, maybe a trip. Myself, I'm going to be heading to Vegas, to the desert, to climb for just about 2 weeks in January. So I'm kind of in a short block of rigorous training right now, and though I'll take a few days off over the holidays, I'm going to try to stay on my training program and get a nice little taper in the final days before I fly out to Vegas. And so if you have a similar trip planned, let's say in the next month, then it's important you try to stay with your program and not do too much damage to the gains that you've acquired in recent weeks. It's easy in a holiday period like this, if there are numerous holiday parties and events, and right here where I'm sitting just a few feet from me are a stack of Christmas cookies that my wife has been baking. And so it would be really easy to feast on those cookies 24/7, which I would enjoy, but it would be very counterproductive. And so I need to be disciplined and keep fresh in mind my climbing plans and my climbing goals, and know that pigging out on the cookies wouldn't be the most productive thing. And it might be a form of self-sabotage, knowing that I have an important trip near, not too far in the future. So, on the other hand, if you have no outdoor climbing plans and maybe you just finished up your outdoor climbing season, maybe this is a time you can take a week or two off and kind of get a break from hard training, from hard climbing. Maybe you have some aches and pains that need a week or two of downtime so you can recover. And maybe you just want to be kind of active more recreationally, going for a jog or a walk, or maybe going skiing or biking or something like that. But taking a break from hard training and hard climbing might be a good thing, if you don't have any near-term climbing plans. And so, if you put on a pound or 2 or 3 or a kilogram of weight over the holidays, it wouldn't be a big deal. But if you're like me and have climbing plans in the very near future, well then, putting on a few pounds or a few kilos would be a big deal if you're, going to be doing some performance climbing in the very near future. So, keep those things in mind. And, one strategy that I use when I am kind of going to be training hard for a trip, but also going to be engaging in some meals, some family events where I know there'll be, adult beverages and lots of desserts and cookies and good meals to be had. I'm not going to deprive myself of that stuff completely. I'm going to try to think about what I'm eating, but I'm not going to deny myself anything. What I do tend to do is, like if I know there's a Christmas Eve dinner in store, well then I'll make sure that earlier in the day I get a good workout in. Maybe go for a run. Maybe even do a little bit of intermittent fasting where I will, eat very lightly or little, hardly anything earlier in the day, knowing that my day is going to be really backloaded with some calories and some, Christmas cookies and a glass of wine with dinner. And therefore, just trying to plan out your training and what you're going to consume in any given day. And if you can, try to keep that calorie in, calorie out balance pretty close to even. So that's a strategy I use. And I don't deny myself desserts because that's part of the season and it's something I enjoy, but I do kind of use them as rewards. I don't use food. I don't use meals as a reward, but those sweets that really don't have much nutritional value and they can do a lot of damage in high doses, those I kind of use as rewards. So it's like, I had a good long run today or I had a good hard workout. I'm not going to feel bad having a few Christmas cookies for dessert. And so I think you just have to know kind of what your situation is. Do you have performance climbing in the near term or not? And try to gauge your training appropriately for the holidays. And, and if you do take some time off and do kind of let loose over the holidays, then, right around New Year's or right after New Year's, reel things back in, get back onto your programs, set off on, a training block of, 4, 8, 10 weeks that will hopefully lead you into your next opportunity to climb outdoors. Or, perhaps, if you're a competition climber, you have something in the new year that is on the calendar. Keep that in mind and plan ahead. I think it was 2 episodes ago of the Training Café, 51, where I talked about kind of that end of season assessment and reflection and planning for the future. So if you haven't watched that one, it would be a good one to go back because it kind of ties together quite nicely with this episode. Okay, so enough with that little lecture. Let's get on to some of your questions, and I see some of them popping in here. So hopefully the audio is good enough that you can hear me answer some training questions here. And let me scroll up here to the top and see what we have here. Okay, from Connor. It says, hey, Eric, what do you think of the merit of focusing on bouldering for a few weeks this winter and then gaining fitness on the projects? I think it's a good plan. I know a lot of climbers who do that. Here in the United States especially, kind of, winter's more bouldering season. You go to those desert southern areas and it's low humidity and good crisp conditions for bouldering. And, to do a bouldering block in the dead of winter can be a really good thing to kind of get your strength and power up to the next level, with doing a period of limit bouldering or training that is focused on that type of thing. And then as the warmer weather and, the climbing areas where there's a lot of sport routes and trad routes get a bit warmer, spring, summer, into fall, a lot of climbers then shift more to a route focus. Now, one thing I would say is if you really do have big route climbing goals for next year, you have to be careful if you do too long of a period of bouldering or strength power training without any volume climbing, because the structural adaptations like capillary density in your climbing muscles, mitochondria content, volume in your climbing muscles, very, very important for that aerobic energy system to give you that endurance and support power endurance for route climbing. And if you just do boulders, 15-foot boulders or 5-meter boulders where you're never climbing for more than 5, 10, 20 seconds at a time, you're not really working that aerobic energy system much at all. And so you can kind of shrivel up in terms of your mitochondria content and capillaries if it's a long break from route climbing. And so I was talking to a climber yesterday who's going to focus on bouldering for 3 months. And I said, well, you should really get in 1 route session per week throughout that 3-month period. Not a performance route climbing session, but just kind of doing some of that threshold training where you get on some routes that are submaximal, kind of climbing at an intensity of 6 to 7, maybe at the very most 8 out of 10, where you get pumped, but you don't pump out, you don't power out, where you're able to kind of climb through the pump, a very moderate pump. And if you get to the gym and do that for, an aggregate of, say, 20 to 40 minutes of climbing, now that might be 8 5-minute routes, where you're climbing at that submaximal level and really working the aerobic system hard and getting a light to moderate pump. That will maintain that capillary network and mitochondria content for the most part. There'll still be a bit of a segue back into route climbing after this longer bouldering break, but you'll get back a lot faster than if you do no targeting of that aerobic energy system. So, that is a very personalized thing in terms of how important route climbing performance is to you. But if that is important, then you don't want to totally abandon it during your bouldering block. Next trip up here, Mario. Will they ship from UK to EU? Yes, absolutely. That was the whole point of this. I looked at several options for distributing PhysiVantage throughout the United Kingdom and the EU countries, and Banana Fingers was, I felt, the best partner at this time. They're enthusiastic. They have a big warehouse, a good infrastructure for shipping, really worldwide. They ship everywhere, Asia, Australia, and throughout Europe and Eastern Europe. And so they will be able to deal with it. The customs and duties and shipping will be insignificant compared to what you would pay ordering from the United States. They have that all figured out because every day they ship climbing gear throughout Europe. And so they know how to kind of work the system and provide you with minimal impact. I think many countries there will be some duty added, but I think they will also offer potentially free shipping if you meet some order threshold. So you have to wait and see when it gets on their website. It will calculate all that for you on the fly. But the whole point of this was to set things up so that climbers in any European country would be able to get the PhysiVantage from Banana Fingers and Epic TV Store. So I think it's going to be just fine. Okay, let me see here. Where are we at? Eric. Okay, Eric Voller writes, or Faller perhaps, depending on what country he's from. As many of us are about to take a break between seasons to start training again after a roughly 10-day break from climbing, my question is about the break. I do the 10-minute prehab routine with the collagen daily. Should I continue these light prehab sessions during the break or take a total break? And that's a great question. What Eric is referring to here is I have been promoting for a number of years the research and evidence that is profound and important to climbers, that doing some brief light loading of your climbing tendons and ligaments on a daily basis is actually a good thing. So the old school thinking was, you would climb hard or train hard one day and then take total rest the next day so that your muscles and connective tissues could recover. And yeah, that's a good start, but there's actually evidence now that by loading the connective tissues submaximally, briefly, nothing intense, you're not going bouldering, you're just doing some light pull-ups and hangs, and maybe some rotator cuff and elbow training. Loading the tendons enough to turn on the tenocytes. Those are the living cells that extrude collagen and help remodel your tendons and ligaments. By giving them an extra signal on your rest day is a really good thing. In fact, you can even do 2 of those brief sessions on your rest days if you really want to. Do one in the morning and one in the evening, and you kind of turn on those tenocytes twice in the day, to get them to, again, extrude collagen, and by giving the loading signal, they know how to align the collagen, and you can foster stronger, healthier connective tissues by doing that. So if possible during your 10-day break, Eric, to do, one or two of those light loading sessions per day would be a really good thing. And again, it doesn't have to be just the fingers. You can do some rotator cuff exercise, some Ys and Ts for, to load all the scapular stabilizer muscles and tendons. And although the training isn't intended to be like a strength training muscle workout, it should not be that heavy nor intense. It should be, in fact, light enough that it's not stressing the muscles and hindering your recovery day, but does give enough loading to the connective tissues, the tendons and ligaments, to turn on those tenocytes and give them the information and the stimulus they need to continue remodeling during your rest days. And so, I think that would be a good thing to do if you have the time to do. And it's something I try to do almost every morning. After I wake up and brew my coffee, I have my collagen, and I go down to my home gym and do that light period of loading, which takes me all of 10 or 15 minutes. But it's a good way to start the day, and it's a very healthy thing and proactive thing if you want to support strong tendons and ligaments going forward. And the protocol is to consume the collagen. It could be in water, it could be in juice, it could be mixed into coffee, however you want to do it, for your taste buds in the morning. But getting that into your system about a half an hour before you load the connective tissues, then you have the amino acids, the collagen-specific amino acids, to be utilized when the tenocytes are turned on. And so that's the proven protocol that really is synergistic and effective and brings about fantastic results. The research is one thing, it's impressive, but even more impressive is the anecdotal, human feedback from hundreds of climbers who have done this successfully and found it to be beneficial. And there's articles on my Training for Climbing website, my Training for Climbing YouTube channel. I did a video on this protective protocol, this prehab protocol. And if you go to PhysiVantage.com and click on the link that says science at the top, you can read some of the research that helps guide these protocols. And really was the research that compelled me to, 5 years ago, begin to research and develop PhysiVantage products that are now available in North America and soon in Europe. Okay, on we go. From Jammer RO, greetings from Denmark. What are your opinions on performance-enhancing drugs in climbing and climbing training? Would love to hear your personal opinion on this. And yeah, I have a lot of thoughts and opinions. I've been coaching climbing for decades when climbing was a really small sport, and I was the only person writing about it, and now it's, of course, an Olympic sport. And when there are medals to be won and money to be made, which there are now in the climbing world, you can be sure that there are some people dabbling in performance-enhancing drugs. And, not just the professionals wanting to win money and medals, but also perhaps some recreational, weekend warrior climbers who have hit a plateau and think that they can use certain pharmaceutical means to enhance performance to get to the next grade. I've been asked it many times, and climbing has very unique demands, and so if you were going to cheat in some way with prescription drugs and pharmaceuticals, you wouldn't want to do exactly what is being done in other sports, like in weightlifting or bicycle racing. There are different ways, and many sports have many different pharmaceutical means to try to enhance performance and recovery and strength gains and power gains. And a lot of those things do work and do provide an extra edge, which is why there's drug testing, to weed out those people who are cheating and enhancing performance. But there's also the downsides, besides the ethical and moral issues. and the fact that you're kind of cheating and breaking the rules by going across to pharmaceuticals. There are also health concerns in terms of the effects of the drugs on longevity, and or if you're injecting growth hormone or testosterone, which enhances cellular growth. Well, if you have any type of a tumor in your body, cancer, unknowingly, you would be accelerating the growth of those cells as well. And there's other, there certain drugs affect your kidneys and your liver, your heart. Various weight loss drugs can affect your heart in bad ways. There can be hypertrophy of the left ventricle that is unhealthy, and there's a myriad of downside effects that I guess athletes pursuing a goal don't care about, especially when you're young and you feel invincible. But when you get to be my age, you start to think about how long you have left to climb or to be alive, and you certainly don't want to do anything to accelerate your demise. And again, PhysiVantage was born out of me being a 50-year-old climber, still passionate about pushing my personal limits and wanting to do things or find things or create nutritional products that could enhance my training and my recovery, and in a safe way, encourage hormones to be better, reduce cortisol, increase testosterone in healthy ways, not by injecting anything. And so, the PhysiVantage products were invented for that purpose and work certainly for that purpose as well. If I'm doing everything else right, training right, eating right, well then, some of these supplements can make a big difference as well. And I just had my 2 best climbing seasons of my 50s last year and this year as a 57-year-old. And so, kind of the proof's in the pudding for me there. But getting back to, whether there's cheaters, yes, I'm sure there are. That's inevitable. I don't know that I should give specifics on what would be valuable or what wouldn't be valuable, but I don't think anything that puts on additional muscle mass would be helpful, except perhaps in speed climbing, where the people do tend to have big leg muscles, to be able to create that kind of sprinter's physique, because speed climbing is sprinting on a vertical wall. And so just like Olympic sprinters have been busted for doping for testosterone and growth hormone and various anabolics, perhaps it could help a speed climber. In terms of route climbing, well, kind of similar to bikers, EPO, which would increase your red blood cell count, would likely be performance enhancing for a route climber. But you can also die from taking EPO because your blood can get too thick with red blood cells. And so it would be a very dangerous thing to experiment with unless you had the resources to draw blood on a weekly basis and check your red blood cell count to make sure it wasn't getting too high. And there are other more subtle effects that you could potentially get from a variety of pharmaceuticals, but I don't see any reason to list them out here. But the old bodybuilder drugs, I don't think they're of much benefit for climbers, except for maybe speed climbers and perhaps people that specialize on very short boulders where extra mass might not be a drawback. But if you're doing long boulders or steep overhanging routes, it's a strength to power ratio sport, and anything that puts on mass, especially from the waist down, would be counterproductive. So it's an interesting topic to talk about, and I will, in future years, I'm sure, voice more opinions on these things, but there's kind of a starting point. Okay, let's move on here. Do extensor muscles limit flexor strength? And the answer is yes, in extreme situations. If you're just isolating, bicep curls, then there's not much contribution, by the antagonist or extensor muscles, the triceps. I mean, there's a little bit of stabilization, posture that needs to be maintained. but it's an isolation exercise that really targets the biceps. But when you get into more real-life climbing scenarios, like gripping a hold, especially as holds get small, being able to stabilize your wrist, being able to stabilize your shoulder, and put it in a position where you are strongest. You know, when you're really trying to hang on hard on a crimp, how your elbow comes out, kind of that chicken winging, that is your brain putting your arm and wrist position, your shoulder and wrist position in a position where it can elicit the most finger force. And you need to hold your wrist stable when you're grabbing small holds. And so, yes, strengthening extensor muscles, your wrist and finger extensors, and having good antagonist strength throughout your torso, your shoulders, I think is very, very important for sports-specific strength. It's got to be the right type of strength and training. You don't want to bulk up in those pushing muscles. Having big, massive bodybuilder pecs would be counterproductive for climbing. Now, they might get a little bigger when you do your antagonist training, but if they're getting massive, if you're getting huge shoulders and pecs, well, then you're kind of losing that climber's physique. And so you want to train the extensor muscles appropriately. Okay, next question. Mario, do you see a recent video from Dave McLeod on nutrition, mainly his study of keto and high-protein diet for climbers? I have not. I mean, Dave McLeod is a super smart guy, and I know he's really into the nutrition thing as well. And I'm, of course, very familiar with the ketogenic diet and high-protein diet, which are not the same thing. A keto diet is going to be high in protein because you're eating mainly protein and carbs. Whereas you could be on a high-protein diet that's certainly not keto, that has a lot of carbohydrate in it. In terms of, health and body mass, BMI, you could go on a keto diet, you could go on a vegan diet, you could be, somewhere in between. And if you follow the diet and eat smartly, you can get good results, in terms of, insulin levels and health and fitness and BMI. But for performance, to perform at a high level in a sport like climbing, a power endurance sport, you need to have glycogen in your muscles. So while you might be able to do periods of keto, which is very low carbohydrate, very, very low carbohydrate, to be able to, if you're really going into ketogenesis, making ketones, you can't have hardly any carbs in your diet, which means you've depleted glycogen from your muscles. And that's a bad move in a power endurance sport because glycogen is what is the fuel for anaerobic glycolysis. When you're climbing sustained power endurance boulders and routes, you need glycogen. And glycogen is stored in the muscle cells locally, and it's stored in your liver, and it's enough for a couple of hours of power endurance exercise. When you deplete that, then you have to rely more on fat stores, or you start to break down muscle, which you don't want to do. And so, some people have argued, well, wouldn't it be better just to be fat adapted to burning fat? And yeah, that's a good thing. It's really good if you're an ultra marathoner, someone who has to go for many hours, or an ultra marathon, potentially a full day, to be fat adapted could potentially be a really good thing. But for a power endurance athlete specializing in boulders and sport routes, the carbohydrate's preferable, not only because it's the preferred fuel choice for anaerobic glycolysis, but if your body is burning lipids, fat essentially as the fuel for the oxidative energy pathway, you actually get fewer ATPs out of the mitochondria per unit of oxygen than you do when you are have aerobic glycolysis. If you're exercising below the anaerobic threshold and you're burning glycogen, the mitochondria are utilizing glycogen via the aerobic energy pathway, you get more ATPs per unit of oxygen. So, the glycogen is a better fuel source for power endurance sports. But again, these questions require nuanced answers because there's a lot of individual differences. There's a lot of different applications. Maybe training in a keto diet could be a good thing, but then switching to a carbohydrate diet for periods of performance climbing, that is a possible protocol. And so I think it's something you need to maybe experiment with and consult on a very knowledgeable coach or nutritionist, someone like Dave, because there's a lot of nutritionists out there who have textbook smarts. They might be brilliant, but if they've never worked with an elite climber, they don't know the unique needs. If they just kind of read off the textbook answers or tell you what they did with an elite bike racer, they're probably giving you bad information because dealing with high-level climbing is a very specific thing and demands a very specific answer. So be careful following experts in training or nutrition that aren't, super knowledgeable about climbing and haven't coached high-level climbers because they might be giving you correct textbook answers, but they could be giving you the wrong answers when it comes to climbing performance. Okay, next question. Regarding maximum strength cycle, how to best schedule max sessions, split session possible Monday and Friday, efficient 7:53 strength protocol in the morning, afternoon limit bouldering. Well, first of all, I think max strength sessions are best done twice a week, at most 3 days a week. And you could, if you have enough time that you can really rest between reps, do it all in one session where you would do like a lengthy progressive warm-up. You would do some limit bouldering for an hour, hour and a half with a lot of rest between those efforts so that they're really quality limit efforts. And then because you're taking a lot of rest, you're not creating a lot of fatigue, and you're not wearing down your nervous system with an hour, hour and a half of limit bouldering so that you can then go on and do some weighted hangs like the 7:53 protocol or do a little bit of campus boarding and do everything in one session. Now that would probably take 3 hours. We do it here at our, when I train people, and my sons and myself do that type of thing if we have 3 hours to dedicate where we don't have to rush through the bouldering and rush through the hangboarding, and we can have really quality 3-minute at least rest between limit boulders, between hangs, between campus sets. And in that context, you can do it all in one session. Now, if you're really limited, you need to get in and out of the gym in an hour and a half, then you could go in and warm up in 30 minutes and then have an hour to do your hangboard or campusing workout, say in the morning. And then 8 hours later, go to the gym and do a limit. You'd have to warm up again and then do your limit session. You could potentially do that. Though there's many other ways to go about it. You could do the max strength in the morning, and then your second gym session could be more of a power endurance session. Long boulders or bouldering 4x4s or short, powerful sport routes. That's a program we often do in our family as well that works really, really well. But it's got to be personalized, and that's a very elite level program. The whole 2-a-day thing is very, very effective when used properly with high-level climbers. If you're kind of a newbie in your first couple of years of climbing, then it's not appropriate. So, hopefully that helps you out a little bit, though it probably lacks some nuance and personalization that is needed. Okay, Donnie says, regarding the topic of your previous Café 52 on auto-regulation, do you suggest determining a proper weight for implementing an appropriate warm-up? Do you suggest determining a proper weight for implementing an appropriate... I'm not exactly sure what you mean by a proper weight. Or maybe let's see if there's a follow-up here. Do you consider implementing easy to digest carbohydrate intermittently during a climbing session? Okay, well, that's different question by the same guy. I'm not sure what you mean in the first question there. In my last training cafe, I did talk about auto-regulation and kind of using a 30 to 40-minute progressive warm-up that has kind of, some benchmark exercises, weighted pull-ups that you can gauge and collect data and compare to previous warm-ups and therefore know whether you're 100% or not. And therefore then adjust your workout appropriately. Do the whole workout if you are 100%, or maybe dial things back or adjust the workout if you're not 100%. And so that's, in a nutshell, auto-regulation. Now, in terms of carbohydrate ingestion, if you're going into a workout and you've been eating carbohydrates in the past 24 hours so that there is glycogen in your muscles and in your liver, then there's really no benefit to consuming additional carbohydrate if the workout is, say, less than about 2 hours. Now, if you're going to do one of those longer sessions or go climbing all day, then absolutely you have to eat throughout the day. And so having some, feedings throughout the workout or the day, if it's, again, a 3 or 4 hour workout, you don't need to eat a lot. You don't want to eat a lot. If you would eat something really significant and put it in your belly, then you start to divert blood to your stomach and away from your muscles to digest that food, and it's just not a good thing. Energy bars, small snacks for the workout would be a good thing. Now, an all-day climbing situation is a little different. You might need a bagel sandwich. You might need a couple of energy bars and perhaps an electrolyte drink mix, so that you are properly fueling yourself and hydrating yourself throughout that, say, 8-hour climbing day. But a 2-hour gym workout, the food you eat isn't really going to be of all that much benefit, if any benefit. Now, if you're coming to the gym from work and you haven't eaten for 4 or 5 hours, well, then maybe, a power bar or some type of protein bar that has carbohydrate and protein blended and some healthy fats, it could be a good thing, heading into the gym, maybe along with a cup of coffee or something like that. I will do that sometimes if I'm going to a climbing gym and haven't eaten recently. But if you're eating carbohydrates regularly, 3 meals a day, then your glycogen supplies in the muscle and liver should be enough to, get you through a 2-hour workout. Okay, next question. Oliver says he's taking 10 days off from climbing. Usually says he does that usually twice per year, which is probably a smart thing to do, both mentally and physically, to have a bit of a break. Says he'll be skiing and have been training for that for 6 weeks, in addition to climbing to my peak ever 3 weeks ago. So that's great. Good job. And doing some yoga. Early January, I plan to come back and do an endurance route, 4 to 6 weeks, some ice climbing. Then mid-February, start 6-week training block. Yeah, so that all sounds great. It sounds like you're really smart and you have planned things out well. My training cafe 2 episodes ago, 51, where I talked about end-of-season assessment and planning for the future, that was the type of schedule I was encouraging people to do, where you get out a calendar. I actually use a paper calendar, and I map out kind of my hopes and wishes for some climbing trips for the year ahead. And although it might change and shift around, I can kind of block in, like right now I'm dreaming of going to Flatanger next August, and perhaps a few weeks in Sayus in June. Now maybe I can't do both of them, but I'm going to block them in, and hopefully at least one of them will come to become reality. And then some shorter trips, weekend trips, you can kind of build in as you go, and start to block in your training periods. And if you're going to do a kind of a period of skiing or ice climbing, you block those in. Try to move the puzzle pieces around, and that's way more effective than just making it up as you go, which I did back in the old days, back in the 80s. I didn't know better. I was a young climber, and you were just kind of ad lib training and ad lib climbing, and and there was no good recipe for success. And I mean, I got better at climbing despite that lack of a recipe, but that's because climbing's a skill sport, and if you're just climbing year over year, you're going to get better, at least for some time. Now, eventually, you need to start dialing in your mental game, your training game, be able to avoid injury as you're grabbing smaller holds and doing crazier moves, and all those things take an intelligent training program, which all these years later, I'm finally on and able to help you guys get on as well. And so I like that you've mapped things out there, Oliver, and so good luck on your skiing and ice climbing adventures here. Should I use the 753 protocol only during strength and power phase in the 10-week cycle? In terms of using it 2 or 3 days a week, yes, that should be focused on that strength power block. But I am an advocate of trying to maintain peak finger force as best as you can throughout the training cycle, throughout the climbing year. And so if you're doing a block of performance climbing, just trying to get a 1 hangboard workout a week somewhere would be a nice thing. It'll help maintain peak finger force and recruitment. Because if you're just climbing at body weight, you tend to get weaker. Even though you're climbing a lot, you're maybe building endurance but losing max strength. I always come home from climbing trips weaker when I test myself. My finger force has gone down. So when you're in a training block, same thing. You might have your strength power phase of, say, 3 weeks of strength and power training where you're doing over 3 weeks, maybe 6, 7, 8 of those 753 protocol workouts. But then during the other phases, you would do 1 a week. Okay, so you'd work in somewhere 1 session where you do 753, near max hangs and maybe some weighted pull-ups, and try to maintain peak strength throughout the whole training cycle. Okay, yeah, audio super low. Sorry about that. I'll have to try to get it figured out for next time. So let's move on here. And I do want to wrap things up by the top of the hour here. So just a few more questions. Okay, Tanya, how would you suggest structuring limit bouldering sessions within a 2-hour period on a board, like a moon or tension system style board, including warm-up? Yeah, so kind of what she's getting here is, the context of a gym workout. You're going to have 2 hours there, and you're going to be doing limit sessions on a system wall, which that's a very popular kind of workout. I think you need a 30-minute progressive warm-up. It starts off very generalized, some body exercises, to warm up your core muscles and your pulling muscles, and some few hangs on some big holds, and then progressively a few smaller holds, and then maybe doing a couple of weighted pull-ups. Nothing crazy, but kind of to slowly turn on your nervous system, get your enzymes firing to support anaerobic and aerobic energy production. And of course, getting the nervous system turned on is why doing a few weighted hangs at the end of the warm-up and a few weighted pull-ups towards the end of that warm-up, 30-minute period. And then when you get on the system wall, again, kind of, let's say your limit is, I don't know, V7, V8. Well, get on there and do a V2 and a V3 and a V4 and a V5 and kind of, spend 20 minutes doing a few routes like that. So it could be that your first hour is this long progressive warm-up. So it takes patience to not just go to the board and try to do a limit boulder right away, but that wouldn't be effective. And you could get injured. Whereas doing the long progressive warm-up, really your first hour is this ramping up so that 1 hour into your session, into your 2-hour session, then you're ready to start projecting at your limit. And so, you can then kind of both make your best efforts because your nervous system is fully turned on and your muscles are fully ready. So you're going to make quality efforts on those limit boulders. But you're also going to be hopefully warmed up throughout your scapular stabilizers, and your whole body will be more pliable and resistant to getting tweaked. And that's a smart thing when trying to boulder at your limit. So it takes patience to do that long 1 hour progressive warm-up, but spend the second hour then doing your limit bouldering. And again, rest, really take high quality rests between attempts. If it's a good attempt where you almost sent, and it's been, maybe it's a 5, 6, 8 move problem, you might need 3, 4 minutes. If you fall off the first move or the second move, well, then maybe it's just a 1 minute rest or 1.5 minute rest between attempts on that limit boulder. And again, if you rest appropriately between efforts, then just maybe if you have a little extra time at the end of your workout, after your 1 hour progressive warm-up and your 1 hour limit bouldering, if you have a little extra time, maybe you then cycle back to the hangboard and just do a few max hangs, or maybe go to the campus board and do a little bit of laddering. If you're highly fatigued from the system walling, forget it, don't do it. But if you're not highly fatigued, then you could put in a pinch of some hangboard or campusing at the very end, and you'd have a really good workout. So hopefully that helps you out there. Okay, Vic, do you think it would be better to sport climb on Saturday and boulder Sunday, or vice versa? Definitely it would be better to boulder Saturday and sport climb Sunday. Just like if you were going to do back-to-back training days, Tuesday, Wednesday, Saturday, Sunday, if you were going to kind of do a DUP training program where you're training all energy systems over the course of a week, you would do the strength power on day one, and then on the next day you would do the more power endurance, aerobic endurance. Doing it the other way around, generates a lot more fatigue. The route day generates a lot more fatigue. You can really deplete glycogen that maybe won't be fully back for the next day. You can generate a delayed onset muscle soreness that would hinder your bouldering day. So yeah, it's really preferable bouldering day one and then the route climbing or endurance training day two. Okay, and I guess this is a follow-up here. I guess just reiterating about the 753 protocol. Yes, yeah. So, if you're doing a 753, one maintenance workout of max strength during, say, a power endurance phase, you could do that morning session as kind of that one maintenance, and then the afternoon session would be the power endurance session, afternoon or evening. Absolutely. Yep, that'd be a good way to do it. And if you be sure to eat some carbohydrate, obviously get some protein, and try to get a 6 or 8 hour break between those two sessions. That would be ideal. Okay, and this might be a good place to end because I got to the last question, and it's a thank you from JF, and I appreciate that. And yes, I will have my family together for the holidays just for 1 week. My older son has been climbing out in the mountains outside Vegas, limestone climbing in some big caves, but he's flying home next week. And my younger son just got back from Penn State, so he's here training with me at home this week. And so we'll be one big happy Hörst family over Christmas. And then the boys will fly back to the desert at the end of December for a couple weeks, and hopefully my wife and I can join them for a bit in January. That's kind of the game plan. So the next training cafe, that would be potentially coming on January 3rd, although that might be my travel day flying to Vegas. And if so, it might not happen unless I do it from the airport or something. That would be interesting. So I won't speak to you in this setting again. I will be releasing a Training for Climbing podcast around the end of the year, and I hope you check those out every month. I just released a podcast last week about the 10 common training mistakes that commonly hold climbers back. And, in heading into the new year, I think it's always a good thing to not only set new goals, but also set a kind of a new training course. And so that podcast could be very helpful. Maybe 1 or 2 or 3 of the training mistakes will ring true or be something that you can say, yeah, I kind of do that sometimes. Maybe I should adjust my training. And so I think it could be a really beneficial podcast to listen to. So go to iTunes, or I guess it's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Play. I think all those have the Training for Climbing podcast ready for download. Check them out. And again, for European viewers, PhysiVantage is coming to the UK and EU and will soon appear on the bananafingers.com and Epic TV store. So check it out in the coming weeks. And I'm excited to make my hard work your potential benefit by way of the PhysiVantage products. And so check that out. So I'm going to sign off wishing each of you a happy holiday. If you celebrate Christmas as I do, well then Merry Christmas, or whatever you celebrate. I hope it's a good time for you and your family, and you have some time to kick back and relax, and also some time to train hard and hopefully climb hard in the coming weeks. And I wish you a happy 2022. We'll see you back here in the Training Cafe in the new year, and I hope to be your coach remotely and help guide you and hopefully inspire you and share my decades of wisdom. And if I can make you a little better, a little more effective at climbing and perhaps in life, then it's time well spent here for me at the cafe. So until next time, enjoy your coffee. Have a good new year.